tonight. Saskatchewan teachers are back on the picket line for a one-day strike, hoping to force the government back to the bargaining table. Also, week 2 of the inquest into the mass stabbing at Smith Cree Nation and Weldon gets underway in Melfort. Plus, data shows that population is surging in Saskatoon. Can the bridge city handle the influx of people?
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Monday, January 22nd, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. Good evening and thank you for joining us. Teachers across the province were on the picket line again this morning. Alexander Kwan brings us more on the latest job action.
For the second time in as many weeks, Saskatchewan teachers are on strike. 13,000 teachers were back on the picket line at more than 30 demonstration sites on Monday, trying to get the public's attention and force the government back to the bargaining table. And while a one-day strike last week didn't change anything yet, the federation representing teachers says they remain motivated.
We heard Minister Cockrell last week saying he had drawn a line in the sand, he wasn't budging, that he's not moving. Well, we aren't either. So somebody's got to budge. It's not going to be us. I think we've been out here now 2 days in this kind of weather. We're pretty much determined that this is something that we are willing to fight for.
Teachers have been without a contract since August. Both sides say they are ready to negotiate, but the province and STF are blaming each other for not budging on demands. The leader of the official opposition says the education minister should come down and see what teachers are fighting for.
The passion they have for the kids, their desire to improve the system, everyone should be hearing that story. We shouldn't be hearing, fighting in the media or the minister, casting aspersions on the motives of the teachers. We should have them at the table trying to get a deal.
The STF wants the province to address the issues of classroom size and a lack of funding to support students with complex needs. Teachers are also asking for a 2% annual wage increase. They also want their salaries tied to the Consumer Price Index, CPI for short, which is a common measure of inflation. The province says CPI isn't a factor in any other collective agreement it has signed and will not be in this one. Instead, teachers are being offered 7% over 3 years. As for the issues around class sizes and student needs, the government will not move, insisting that's a school division issue. It's not clear what will happen next. Teachers are set to return to the classroom on Tuesday, and while the Teachers Federation says they are looking to avoid an indefinite strike, they also say that further job action could affect extracurricular activities and sports. Alexander Kwan, CBC News, Regina.
For one Regina mom, it's been an emotional week with 3 kids who have complex needs. Sarah Hennessy says her kids' teachers and their school staff go above and beyond to help them. Her family moved here from Alberta in 2020, and she says she feels lucky because her kids' teachers are amazing. But she says teachers and students need help.
This whole complex classroom thing, it's my kids. Mm-hmm. It's my heart and my soul out there every day. And it's frustrating that the government only wants to focus on wages.
Hennessy says it's not just about her own kids, that so many students could benefit from full-time support. She wants to see the government provide more money so teachers can get adequate help and support in the classroom. The inquest into the mass stabbings at Smith Cree Nation and Weldon has entered into its second week in Melfort. The chief of the Chikastai Paysin Band, one of the communities of the Smith Cree Nation, says it's been a pretty emotional last week for the membership. Calvin Sanderson says a few puzzle pieces are still missing, but he looks forward to the recommendations.
What kind of recommendations going to come out of this inquest? Whether it's going to be heard provincially, federally, and one of our concept is, looking at our own police force, peacekeepers. I do realize that they have a lot of law enforcement out there. they said communities, whether the communities are a part of the First Nations communities. So, you know, things like that we look forward to on the recommendations.
He says the inquest has been emotionally triggering and hopes it leads to some kind of response both federally and provincially. And listening to this second week of testimony at the inquest in Melfort is the CBC's Jason Warwick. He joins us now from Melfort. Jason, tell us about today's testimony.
We heard from a number of experts today, including an RCMP officer who's the head of a specialized unit that helps to track down people who are wanted on warrants. He said that, yes, Miles Sanderson, the killer in this horrible tragedy, was wanted for a warrant. He had a number of crimes that they were wanting him to answer for, and he was at large for several months. But they were too busy pursuing many other criminals with more serious concerns, more serious, more imminent violent records, if you can believe that. And so he talked about this points system that they've devised. And now this point system wasn't in its current form when this tragedy happened a couple of years ago. But if that point system was applied back then, Miles Sanderson, with his various crimes, would have scored a point total of 105. Now remember that, 105 points. It sounded high when we heard it because of all of the crimes that he had committed. There are 18 people in the province at this moment with scores exceeding 1,000 points. There is one offender with a point score more than 5,000 points. And those, of course, are assigned for crimes like murder, attempted murder, manslaughter, or repeated use of a firearm to commit an offense. The point system goes all the way down to other crimes like obstructing justice or fraud. And as we heard from them, they work as hard as they can to pursue the most serious offenders, because they said the most serious offenders are responsible for a greatly disproportionate amount of the crime in many communities across this province. So again, Miles Sanderson was a serious concern, but unfortunately, they had many people that were more serious concerns, Sam. And we also heard earlier today from the head of the emergency medical response for Sask Health for the northern part of the province, just explaining this tremendous emergency response on September 4th in the hours after this happened. He talked about within minutes of the initial calls that came in, ambulances were mobilized from Melfort, from Prince Albert, from Tisdale, other communities, 3 Stars air ambulances, the entire flight, 2 from Saskatoon, 1 from Regina was en route. That's in addition to the dozens of RCMP officers, the conservation officers, the highway patrol, and many others that rushed to the scene to try and help the wounded. She did note that of the 16 people who were treated and transported by ambulance that day, all of them survived.
Wow. Last week, Jason, was all about chronology. It seems like this week is a little more about process. What are we going to hear this week?
It is. Again, the coroner, I'll repeat again, the coroner has said that we are now over the hump, as he put it, with the extremely graphic personal testimony, the minute-by-minute descriptions of these horrific crimes that occurred. Again, 11 people killed, 17 wounded. And now it's more into discussing what now, to talk about the issues that are arising out of this, whether it's First Nations policing in their communities, such as James Smith, whether it's the adequacy of addictions and mental health services in these and other communities. They're going to be looking at all those issues today, as we heard about the parole and the warrant system. That's what this inquest is intended to do, is to look at the broader issues and talk about whether they can prevent such incidents in the future, Sam.
Thanks so much for this, Jason.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Jason Warwick joining us from Melfort tonight. A Regina woman with breast cancer symptoms has been waiting desperately for a diagnosis since last March. Nadine Baker says not knowing if she has cancer for the last 10 months has been stressful. She expressed her concerns this morning, supported by NDP leader Carla Beck and health critic Vicky Mowat.
It's a constant worry, yeah. It's because I saw my mom go through breast cancer, so I know what the picture looks like, and the sooner you get diagnosed, we know, the better your outcomes. So this is what I'm hoping for, yeah.
Baker was told earlier this month that receiving care in Calgary would be faster, so she took the referral. ClearPoint in Calgary has let Baker know they've seen her referral, but she's still on the wait list. Health Minister Everett Hindley says this continues to be a significant priority for the government. Since November, he says 45 urgent patients have received diagnostic care in Calgary, and 148 people have been contacted about the process to make arrangements. If you've been using buses in Saskatoon lately, you've probably had a tough time finding a seat. The city of Saskatoon estimates it grew by more than 14,000 people last year. Pratush Dayal has more on the growth impact.
From an employment perspective, I think the process is slow.
Yogesh Pandey moved to Saskatoon last year. He came here with his family from India in search of a better life. But he says the biggest hurdle has been finding a job, despite having 13 years of experience in India's banking and finance industry.
In Saskatoon, I understand that kind of job prospect is not available right now. Majority of them are in Ontario or in Vancouver.
Pandey says his savings have been dwindling. To save money, he uses city transit to get around, but says the routes are not efficient. Buses are too full and take too long to get to places. He says it's affecting his grocery store runs. The city of Saskatoon estimates that more than 14,000 new people came here over the last year. It's the largest year-over-year population change in decades. About 85% of new residents are international newcomers from places like India, China, Afghanistan, Nigeria, and the Philippines. Dozens of them tell CBC that the city's infrastructure and services need to expand. Gurpreet Singh says it took him 5 months to find a family doctor. He says it was especially troubling when his son was sick and had to be rushed to emergency 1 month after they arrived.
There is a shortage of specialized doctors in Saskatoon, especially for the children, pediatrician. When I speak to other parents, they say they need a pediatrician, and wait time for the pediatrician for one doctor is about 2 years.
Singh says he's also noticed the city is lacking affordable rental options.
We see a huge influx of people needing our services.
Population growth has meant a huge demand for services at the Saskatchewan Intercultural Association. Ahmed Majid there says newcomers are struggling to find healthcare and affordable safe housing in the city. In schools too, Majid says crowded classrooms are also an issue for kids who may need more support.
As a community, we don't necessarily have a clear vision for where we're going to be in 5 years and 10 years. With the school system, with the housing, with the health system as well.
Councillor Cynthia Block says work is underway to create more schools and boost city's infrastructure.
It's going to be transformative for our city to be able to have better active transportation, a modern public transportation system, housing and density that hopefully is more appropriate for a growing city that allows us to grow inward and upward.
At a local level, more services should get introduced.
But until some of those things come together, Yogesh and his family say they'll keep doing the best they can. Pratish Dayal, CBC News, Saskatoon.
What a change in weather from this time last week. Heating systems don't have to pump as hard, and there's even a bit of snow kind of melting out there. So what is in store for this week? Ethan will have your forecast after the break. Stay with us.
The weather update is brought to you by Capital Ford Lincoln. Trade and upgrade is on now.
And our weather specialist, Ethan Williams, joins me now. I know it's warmer, but what is going on outside?
We're having a little bit of difficulty finding out exactly what's going on here. We got minus 30s this time last week. We got a real warm up over the weekend, and things just going to continue to warm up. We also got a little bit of snow in the overnight periods through both Regina and Saskatoon, and a few flakes showing up on radar here. Other than that, just mostly cloudy through much of the province today. That snow really didn't amount to a whole lot. For Regina and southeastern Saskatchewan, we got kind of in the 1 to 3 centimeter range. It was a little bit more as you went northward, and near Saskatoon picking up closer to around 6 centimeters there. Now, in northern Saskatchewan, it was the cold. Of course, we're seeing that warm up in the southern part of the province, but we had extreme cold warnings for places like Uranium City and Stony Rapids, well into the -30s, for temperatures well into the -40s for the wind chill, and temperatures still a bit chilly there right now, near -30. But you see the real gradient in temperatures here, down around -6 in the southwest part of the province. Everyone else kind of falling somewhere in between right now. A little bit windy as well, so adding to a little bit of a wind chill, especially in the northwest of the province. That's where we're seeing things pick up. Has been breezy pretty much province-wide, and it'll continue to be so overnight. We have high pressure off to our east. We have a developing low-pressure system in Alberta. We're caught in the middle, and you see these lines kind of getting closer together. That keeps things a bit breezy overnight. A little bit of snow, too, continuing to move through northern Saskatchewan through the night tonight and tomorrow. This low-pressure system really going to warm things up, though, especially through south and central as we head into tomorrow. But it'll keep things mostly cloudy as we head through these next couple of days. Things warming up so much that a little bit of moisture moving through western sections of the province could even turn to rain heading into Thursday. But it's all snow for northern Saskatchewan, and especially for the very far north, could see upwards of about 5 centimeters in places like Uranium City and Stony Rapids. Now, those winds, we're having a bit of a technical issue with the actual numbers that we can show you on the wind gusts right now, but you can tell by the color gradient here. Winds 40 to 50 kilometers an hour, especially in Regina and southeastern Saskatchewan as we head into tomorrow, before we start to see those start to diminish as we head in to a little bit later through the week. So, Regina, been a little while since we've seen a 7-day forecast like this. Really not much on the board here except for windy conditions tomorrow, near freezing generally these next few days. I think we will get some clearing Wednesday, Thursday. The weekend looking quite beautiful. Actually, things might start to melt a little bit heading into the beginning of next week as the temperatures only start to increase. For Saskatoon, tomorrow again, not quite as breezy as southern Saskatchewan, but we're still looking for a little bit of wind here and there. Not much of a wind chill to contend with, though, only sitting around -2. Cloudy for the next couple of days. Things starting to get clearer heading into the weekend. And then into next week again, we see the warm up as well. And look at the overnight temperatures, well into the -single digits. I was saying that it's a while since we've seen these kind of temperatures, Sam, but I guess it's really not. It's only been less than a month.
It just feels like forever because it was so cold.
Yeah, it was really bad.
All right. Thanks, Ethan.
You bet.
Taylor Stremick and Kaylin Skinner will guide it in. Clean! Just cleaning. The hit, the roll, and a provincial championship for Skylar Ackerman.
And with that, Saskatchewan has a team ready for the Scotties Tournament of Hearts. Skylar Ackerman and her rank from Saskatoon's Nutana Curling Club won the provincial Scotties on Sunday. They beat Martinsville's Nancy Martin 10-9 in an extra end. At just 22, Ackerman is now the youngest skip to win women's provincials. The National Scotties are in Calgary from February 16th to 25th. We'll be back after the break. The big sticking point between teachers and the government in teacher contract negotiations seems to be classroom sizes and complexity. But can that be bargained into a contract? A conciliation report points to British Columbia and says yes. BC's Teachers Federation represents more than 50,000 teachers over 60 school districts. We caught up with its president for some context.
In terms of the contract language, you're talking about class size, class composition, non-enrolling ratios we have as well. That was mostly bargained before it was a provincial item. So that's way back in, I guess, the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. And since it's become provincial, there has remained differences in the language around the province, and we have worked on bargaining it. We've made some improvements, particularly in class size, but it is an issue that can be difficult to bargain for. In terms of class size, it's quite simple. I mean, we have a lot of places across the province. You'll have a cap of 24, so say up to grade 7. In those intermediate grades, like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, they'll just simply say that the class can't be over 24. And obviously, the parties also work together sometimes when necessary, because in some small, remote, rural locals, you know, sometimes there is 25 children, 26 children in the school district who need to go to that class. So obviously everybody works reasonably together when there's a situation like that. But generally speaking, something like class size is quite simple. You just put into the language that, you know, no biology 12 lab class will have more than 24 students, because that's what those rooms are built for, to safely handle. So it looks different, like I said, in different locals, but there's technology classes often have a lower class limit for safety reasons, elementary and secondary. So you just put in the number you want. In terms of what out here is usually termed class composition, the structures of classrooms that support best learning for everybody, that is definitely a little bit more tricky. How you deal with that, how you recognize the fact that there are students, all students benefit from more one-on-one attention, but there are students whose learning needs mean that they need a little more one-on-one attention and or support from another adult. So there are a variety of ways it's done out here, which is that you can recognize students with designated special educational needs as meaning that the class needs to be smaller so that that teacher has the appropriate amount of time to spend with each student. And that's what a lot of our language is modeled around. It has certainly become more difficult to bargain over time, just to be really honest. The last few rounds have not been super productive in that sense. And it's an understandable reason. It's frustrating because from our perspective, it's largely political. The amount of dollars, when you just look at raw dollars that are invested into public education, look very big. Right? Like our budget is $2.something billion, which is an immense amount of money. But when you look at that as the wealth of the province, as a percentage of GDP, as what does that mean? It's actually declined by almost half in our province, the investment in education per GDP. But because the numbers are so big, and when you start reducing class sizes, that means having to hire more staff, that means potentially more buildings. So the numbers get very big very quickly. So governments are hesitant to have to agree to things that cost that much money, which is disappointing and frustrating, because as a Saskatchewan teacher we're doing, yes, it matters to me what conditions me and my members work in, but mostly it's about our students able to get the best learning opportunity they can. Can you keep those teachers? Can they teach the students in those conditions? So it's difficult because the numbers are large, and it's hard to get individuals who aren't engaged in the system always to fully understand the implications of a class size that's a couple lower and what benefit that has for the students and for the teachers.
And Ethan's back with one last look at your weather.
And we'll keep the cloud cover around tonight in Regina and much of southern Saskatchewan. A temperature of around -11. Feeling a little chillier. Those winds start to pick up overnight. But watch the temperature by the morning. -7. We're actually warming up through the night tonight. Still cloudy, though, and still a bit breezy through the morning. And those winds likely going to gust upwards of 50 kilometers an hour for us through the afternoon. Maybe a few breaks of sun here and there, but a nice temperature around the noon hour at -3. Saskatoon also cloudy around -9 as we continue to rise as well through the overnight. Probably getting to around -6. We're not looking for things to be quite as gusty for you tomorrow, but we will see as well some more breaks of sun here and there. I think we're looking for a mix of sun and cloud, as those warm temperatures also going to be seen in Saskatoon as well, Sam.
All right. Thanks, Ethan.
You bet.
And that is it for us tonight. For news anytime, you can always head to cbc.ca/sask or /Saskatoon. You can subscribe to the CBC Saskatchewan YouTube channel or download the CBC News app on your phone or your tablet. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great night.